Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is I, your host, McLateral, aka your boy McLateral FF on the Twitter, coming to you once again for a late night edition of the Lateral Show. And I'm definitely not doing that thing right now where I go and share the tweet everywhere so people will actually pay attention and watch. No, that would be highly unprofessional to look so distracted live on camera, yet here we are, and that's absolutely um what I'm doing. But I digress. We've had some technical issues this week at the Lateral. It's affected some of the written content, it's affected some of the AV content. Rest assured, we have not forgotten, we've just had to pivot. So last night, hopefully, before waivers processed, you caught the late night version one, and hopefully you had a blast. It was a fun time, if I do say so myself. Uh, and we're going for version two right now. As far as written content goes, we should still have from me a week too early waiver wire coming sometime tomorrow. Boom bust on Friday or Saturday. I think Herms may have boom bust as well coming. And then next week, we'll hopefully have a bit more of a regular content schedule. As we hit the midpoint of the season, we have to retool, reassess, something that's been all too common in the industry this week, and for good reason. This is when you realize what's going right, what's going wrong, what can be done properly, and what you just don't have the resources to do. But I think we've done a good job so far, and I think we can continue to do one. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so it is the Week 10 pop-up preview brought to you by the Lateral Show, because we don't have sponsors. Important to note, these teams are on a bye this week. You've got the Chicago Bears, the Cincinnati Bengals, the Houston Texans, and the New York Giants. Some of those teams are going to affect you a lot more than others. For the Bears, obviously, missing out on David Montgomery, going to be a bit of a bummer, especially as you just got him back. Bengals is going to hurt a little. Texans, though, not so much. It's pretty much Brandon Cooks, and you're going to get by fine with missing anyone and everyone else. The Giants have been interesting. I'd say at this point, you're probably missing Devontae Booker, but hopefully when we get back through this bye week, you'll have Saquon Barkley and all will be good. But in the meantime, let's go on to the games that are actually happening. And that starts with our first game, our Thursday game, Ravens and Dolphins. So Ravens and Dolphins, Thursday night. It's pretty simple. Ravens should be able to handle the Dolphins pretty handily. Dolphins defense has not been good. They had a fair amount of takeaways last week, but the offense hasn't been that good either. So anything the defense has done, it set the Dolphins back. I think from the Ravens side, the guy that you probably need to play that most people aren't playing, and I know this because he's still available on a fair amount of waivers, Rashad Bateman. It is time to play Rashad Bateman. This should be a great game for him. That Dolphins defense is weak, particularly the pass defense. Like, Rashad Bateman's seen 6 targets, and 8 targets. It's tough to get much better than that. So I would play him. Another one to keep an eye on is definitely Devonta Freeman. If Latavius Murray does not play, and it seems like he is not going to play, then Devonta Freeman should remain the starter on this team. I know Le'Veon Bell has seemed interesting and perhaps could be played as well if you are desperate. But for me, Devonta Freeman is the clear starter on this team when Latavius Murray is out. And we'll see if he remains a starter when Latavius Murray is back. On the Dolphins side of the ball, just based on potential volume, you probably have to play Myles Gaskin. I don't know the quarterback situation here regarding Tua, but I think it'll be the Jacoby Brissett show again. And then as far as wide receivers, you can probably play Jalen Waddle. He's good enough. He gets used enough. He's clearly the top wide receiver on that team. Otherwise, I am probably staying away. I don't know that I really want to play either of these defenses, though. Again, the Dolphins turn the ball over so much. The Ravens are probably a decent bet, despite the fact that they have not been that good this season, at least in terms of fantasy football. By the way, if you have any comments, any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments section. As long as we are live, I will answer them if I see them. Now, moving on to the Sunday slate of Bills at Jets. For the Bills, you're going to be missing Zach Moss, which is interesting. I'm pretty sure that is confirmed. I'm going to check that in the background, of course, while I so eloquently vamp. But I do believe that Zach Moss is now slated to miss this game because of the concussion protocol, though we will see how that continues. If he does miss, Devin Singletary is probably worth a play just because there will be no other competition. However, if Moss does manage to play, Singletary probably worthless. You can play your Bills wide receivers in this one, and you can definitely play the Bills defense in this one if you have them. But the Jets are the more interesting side of this because it's tough to tell who's going to be healthy, who's going to be viable. It does look like it is going to be the Mike White show. Which is the wrinkle I was not expecting this season to have, but here we are. So if Mike White plays, I think you can play Elijah Moore as like a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 flex candidate. It's not a great matchup against the Bills. However, Elijah Moore has been seeing the volume that it may ultimately not matter. The Jags wide receivers weren't completely worthless against the Bills, though the Bills defense still played well. I think in a better offense with a more ept, it's the opposite of inept, with a better coach, with a better quarterback, I think the Jags could have actually done some damage in that matchup. So, I'm not necessarily going to target the other Jets pass catchers. However, Elijah Moore is someone I'd be interested in playing. Though the pass catchers out of the backfield are interesting as well. Ty Johnson and Michael Carter. Michael Carter, more of a actual running back 2 that you can play. Ty Johnson, more of a desperation running back 2. When I refer to him as a desperation running back 2, by the way, that doesn't mean I view him as better than a flex. It just means that's where I'm going to put him into my lineup. So he is enough of a desperation play that I actually wouldn't flex him. I would probably find a wide receiver that I could flex instead. However, if I really had to fill that second running back spot, Ty Johnson is someone where this is the point where we're at. But if he continues to get the work that he's seen the past couple of weeks with Mike White at quarterback, this is the reality we live in. And the reality is that Ty Johnson has some fantasy viability. All right. Moving on to, is that a typo? No, it's not a typo. Because what the did my mic cut out? I meant to say what the fuck. Oh, there we go. All right. No, but seriously, Bucks at the Washington football team. This should be a disaster for Washington. However, you can still play Terry McLaurin. I probably would. You could play Tyler Heineke if you're desperate enough. I would probably look elsewhere. I think there still is enough out there on waivers that you can look elsewhere. He just hasn't played well is really the issue, but the Buccaneers are a good enough matchup that you could theoretically play him. But the reality is I just don't think he's playing that well. Similarly, in PPR leagues, you could consider J.D. McKissick. You probably have to play Antonio Gibson, even though it has not been great lately. And then the tight end situation is very important to keep an eye on. If Logan Thomas is healthy, which it's actually looking like he might not be, despite the fact that he is eligible to return from IR, and everyone thought he was going to be returning from IR, and he might technically get designated to return from IR, but ultimately not play in this game. He seems to be still having a bit of a setback. So it still could be the Ricky Seals-Jones show, and if it is, he is still a viable tight end play this week. On the Buccaneers side of the ball, you'd feel it's the usual suspects, except we have some wide receiver injuries over there. You got to be careful about that. And so keep an eye on your Chris Godwins. keep an eye on your Antonio Browns. Brown has shed the walking boot, but it's still not a certainty that he's going to play this week. And Chris Godwin has now picked up a foot injury. So that means you should be picking up Tyler Johnson off of waivers if you have the spot for it, because this should be a great matchup against the Washington defense. Brady's going to air it out. He's going to need someone to look for. And the last time that the Bucs played, it was definitely the Tyler Johnson show. As far as guys that weren't named Chris Godwin. So he is someone I would absolutely be playing as a wide receiver 3 or a flex if you can go and pick him up waivers, and Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown are going to be out. Moving on. Falcons and Cowboys. Okay. This one. Remember what happened to the Cowboys last week? How it wasn't good at all. Throw all that out the window. Fluky games happen. This is still an incredibly talented team. And it's not like the Falcons are a lights out defense. With Denver, they've had a rough stretch at times this season, but this is a defense we actually expected to be pretty good in the grand scheme of things. So the fact that they potentially had a good game against Dallas, is it the craziest thing? Yeah, it's still a little crazy, but it's not the craziest thing. So I am inclined to throw week 9 out the window for the Cowboys when evaluating them, though I am a little nervous about CeeDee Lamb, even though I'm still going to play him. Playing Dalton Schultz, playing CeeDee Lamb, playing Amari Cooper, playing Dak Prescott. Probably not playing Tony Pollard, but again, if you need a desperation RB2 candidate, he is someone that could theoretically fill that role, but I'm not flexing him personally. Again, he's someone that fills that role like a Ty Johnson, where it's like, man, if I'm really desperate, I really need that second running back. I want 0 RB or injuries are hurting me. He is someone to consider there, but I think there's better options at the flex position with the way wide receivers are right now. Speaking of which, you probably play Michael Gallup this week. Now, granted, it may not produce the greatest results. We haven't seen much of Gallup this season, obviously, because he's been injured. So do you want to play him his first week back? The Falcons are a good matchup, is the one reason to consider it. Dallas should want a get-right game, and so it should be a solid performance from the Cowboys. So if you need to play Gallup as a wide receiver, he's out there on waivers potentially. Go ahead, scoop him up, throw him into your lineup. But definitely consider him more of a borderline wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 flex guy. I wouldn't be betting the farm on him by any means. Over on the Falcons side of the ball is the Cordero Patterson show. It's still, I think, the Kyle Pitts show. It's really not a whole lot else. I think the wide receivers are a monitor for another week. I don't really want to have to be playing them unless I absolutely have to. For example, I would rather play Michael Gallup than any of the Falcons wide receivers, unless Calvin Ridley magically is able to come back this week, which I think per the terms of the list he went on because of dealing with his mental health struggles, he still has another game after this one before he can come back. So it's not happening. Literally, physically impossible. So I would stay away from the Falcons wide receivers. However, Kyle Pitts, you can play. Cordero Patterson, you can play. And if you listen to the waiver show, you'd already know that you should just be dropping Mike Davis. So you don't even have to worry about playing him. And that is it. Moving on. Saints at Titans. This is another 1:00 game. This one should be a pretty good game. The Titans have looked really good. They're the best team in the AFC right now. They're a little better on the field than they are for fantasy purposes. However, there's a couple interesting things at running back here with the absence of Derrick Henry. Adrian Peterson, definitely, again, another desperation RB2 guy. I didn't love what I saw from the volume he got, but you can't deny that he still got 10 opportunities. To see him get a goal line run, to see him get a target, that's there could have been worse for sure. But it's desperation RB2 territory for me. Same with Jeremy McNichols. If you're in a PPR format, he could see some volume. Donta Foreman, that's a monitor situation for me. But in the meantime, we have a little Ask McLateral Anything, because we have a question from the comment section. The Chosen Rose goes start 2, Manuel Sanders, Hunter Renfrow, Christian Kirk, Jerry Jeudy, or Russell Gage. So first, absolutely Jerry Jeudy. I get he's still coming back from that injury. I get that the Broncos are still kind of shaking things out as far as their wide receivers go, with all 3 guys being healthy. And when I say all 3 guys, I mean Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, and Jerry Jeudy. But man, you can't leave that upside on your bench, especially because like the Eagles defense, not an amazing matchup. We'll get into that later in the show as we approach that matchup. So he's a clear one for me. And then it gets a little trickier. So I'm probably not going to play Russell Gage, as I just discussed. I don't really want to throw in any of the Falcons wide receivers. I can't trust them. I'm kind of staying away from that. I need to see it another week. The Raiders get the Chiefs. I got to say, I'm probably going to go Hunter Renfrow here. It's tough. So the reason I'm probably not going to go Christian Kirk, I don't know if Kyler Murray's going to play. And if Kyler Murray's not going to play, that makes me a little more concerned about the pass catchers for Arizona. Especially if DeAndre Hopkins does play, because that will probably make Colt McCoy rely on DeAndre Hopkins a little more. Also, there's so many passing options in Arizona that we don't know that Christian Kirk's going to be the beneficiary of a potentially solid matchup against the Carolina Panthers. It is sort of the same thing with Emmanuel Sanders. Emmanuel Sanders, solid play against the Jets. I think he's definitely playable. But if these are your options, I would probably bench him in favor of Hunter Renfrow. I like the volume that Renfrow gets. I like how much Carr relies on him. And the Chiefs are a great matchup. So Emmanuel Sanders, good option. Christian Kirk, good option. But for me, it's got to be Jerry Jeudy and Hunter Renfrow. So I'm going to put that here in the comments just in case you did not catch that. Again, super professional operation here over at the Lateral. But there's your answer, the Chosen Roast. And thank you for tuning in. If you have any more questions, feel free to throw them in the comments. Now, Saints at Titans. Where were we? We're going to pause a little for station identification. By which I mean, I just needed a sip of water. All right. Titans, we pretty much got through. So we got through the running backs. Wide receivers, you're playing Julio Jones and you're playing A.J. Brown. You're not playing anyone else. You're not playing the tight ends. You're playing the defense, actually, I think. The Saints are going to be playing either Trevor Siemian or Taysom Hill. Either way, not super mistake-heavy guys, but moderately inexperienced guys that the Titans defense that just made Matt Stafford look like an amateur and has been on a really hot run recently, they could take advantage of something like that, especially in a home game. So I would still play the Titans defense this week, even though it's not the greatest of matchups. And of course, always play Randy Bullock, especially because Saints defense also solid. Again, not a great matchup for them, but if you still had them, they are someone you could play, though perhaps there's a better streaming option elsewhere on your waivers. But for the Saints, Alvin Kamara could miss this game. And if he does, you need to go out and you need to get Mark Ingram, because Mark Ingram, I think, will see an increased workload, and he's already seeing a workload that is relatively fantasy relevant. You know, he saw around 10 touches the last game, I believe. He certainly saw double-digit fantasy points in PPR format. So he's someone I think that you need to be looking on waivers right now, because he is familiar with this offense. He has picked things back up like he barely left. Obviously a couple years older, so the production on the volume he's getting, not quite the same. This isn't going to be like Pro Bowl level. This isn't going to be all pro level Mark Ingram by any means. However, it's going to be RB2 level Mark Ingram. He is an RB2 that I feel much more confident about than some of these other guys, including the ones on the other side of this matchup. So go ahead and grab him if he's still on waivers. The pass catchers are complicated. because Marquez Callaway, Deontay Harris, these are guys that should be viable in this matchup against the Titans, you would think. However, they're pretty unreliable. And so I would like to stay away from the Saints wide receivers if I can. And while I think you could pick up Trevor Siemian and play him in a desperation stream, I prefer to avoid that. And if you pick up Taysom Hill, I probably prefer to avoid playing him. He's more of a stash, and if he goes off on the bench, then so be it. Let him take over the role, and I will play him next game, next week. I'm not risking it this week, especially since he might not be the starter. Siemian seems to still have that job, at least temporarily, on lock. Moving on. Jags at Colts, another 1 o'clock game. The Jags are bad, or so we thought. And then they go ahead and they beat the Buffalo Bills. What are we to do with this information? Throw it out the window. Just throw it out. Still assume they're a bad team. Urban Meyer's still their coach. Trevor Lawrence is still their quarterback. They still have problems. They're going to be playing in Indy. Indy has a good defense. Again, I get it. They had a good game week 9 against the Bills. It was impressive. They still only scored 9 points. So James Robinson, if he is healthy, I am playing. Marvin Jones, potentially, if I need a wide receiver 3 or a flex. I'm probably staying away from Jamal Agnew just in case. I get that he's had some hot weeks recently, but he also, it wasn't great last week. Not that anyone was. So for now, Marvin Jones is really the only wide receiver that I'm looking to play from the Jags, and looking to play, bit of a strong word for it. Dan Arnold, though, I talked about this in the waiver show. I say we talked about it because Herms and I had recorded a wonderful podcast for all of you. The whole thing from start to finish. And then it just didn't pan out. So we had talked about it. This is a Herms endorsed take as well. But you can play Dan Arnold. He is seeing volume. He has tight end 1 upside. He's probably still on your waivers, though hopefully some of you scooped him up this week if you weren't able to get Pat Freiermuth. So if you need a streaming tight end, I would go pick up Dan Arnold. Over on the Colts side of the ball, though, you're playing Carson Wentz. You're playing Michael Pittman Jr. You're playing Jonathan Taylor. If you need to, you can desperately play Naheem Hines as an RB2. Probably staying away from the other Colts pass catchers just because you don't really know who to trust at this moment. T.Y. Hilton might not be healthy is the impression I'm getting, though. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think I read earlier today that he was not looking great for this game. So really, it is the usual suspects for the Colts. Though again, Carson Wentz was widely available on waivers, perhaps still is. So if he's available and you need a quarterback, go and get him. He is a clear choice this week at quarterback in fantasy football, especially going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. But he's already been playing like a top 12 QB anyway. And then the Colts defense, if you happen to have them, you can play them. I don't think they're widely available, so probably won't be able to pick them up off waivers for this one. All right, I'm going to take another brief break here as I take a sip of water. That's good. Low calorie, too. All right, moving on. Lions and Steelers, this will be an interesting game in that we have a couple interesting storylines from this one, to be honest. So from the Lions, we'll start there. They're 0-8. Can they get a win? Dan Campbell seems to have some heart. This team seems to have some heart. It doesn't seem to have nearly as much talent, and it's kind of proving to be a problem at this point. So I honestly don't think they can win this game in Pittsburgh. Had it been in Detroit, maybe, because as much as the Steelers looked good at times this past week, they should have probably lost that game to the Bears. The Lions, there's potential there. It's interesting, especially the arrival of wide receiver Josh Reynolds, who has familiarity with quarterback Jared Goff. I don't know if we're going to get to witness that this week, given that Reynolds has just signed with the Lions. He may need longer than a week to get up to snuff with the playbook, but if he is active for that game, he is someone that I would be looking to target potentially on waivers, especially because the Steelers are kind of a tough matchup against running backs. So I'm not really looking to play Jamal Williams this game, though I'll still play DeAndre Swift, especially in PPR leagues. You can still play TJ Hawkinson, obviously, but I don't think I want to really play any of the Lions wide receivers this week. On the Steelers side of the ball, the interesting storyline, of course, is the Muth Luth. Shout out to the fantasy footballers for that one, of course. But seriously, like Pat Freiermuth, we have been hyped on him here at the Lateral as well, pretty much from the get-go. Sometimes a little too hyped on him. We definitely jumped a little early, or at least I did specifically. But that breakout, better late than never. And it is here. He is looking good. He is an integral part of that offense. I am not scared of Eric Ebron coming back. You shouldn't be either. Go get Pat Freiermuth. Put him in your lineup. Play him. He has top 12 upside the rest of the season, in my opinion. And I cannot wait to see what he does against this Lions defense. It should be a great matchup. You can play him with confidence. As far as the rest of the Steelers go, the Chase Claypool injury is going to be interesting because that will make both Freiermuth and holy crap, I'm blanking out. There we go. James Washington. That's the name I was looking for. It makes both of them much more integral to how that offense operates. I would say, particularly Washington, who hadn't really had a role until some wide receivers started to go down. And now if the second wide receiver is down for the Steelers, he should see his role increase. So James Washington, someone to monitor on the waiver wire if you're in need of a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 flex type of guy, but could be a bit buried down that receiving tree for me. Lions are a good matchup though. So something to keep an eye on, but then also Chris Boswell. If you need a kicker, Chris Boswell, widely available. He was my pick a week ago in my week too early waiver wire column. He is still my pick. If you listened to the waiver show last night, played pretty well on Monday. He's a vet. He knows what he's doing, and this is a good matchup. The only concern I would have is if the Steelers just dominate the Lions so much that he only gets to kick extra points. But barring that, should be a good time. So I would go ahead and get Chris Boswell. All right. Still keeping it in the AFC North. We have the Cleveland Browns at the New England Patriots. With the Browns, the thing to keep an eye on, of course, is the running back situation because Nick Chubb possibly out with COVID. Demetric Felton possibly out with COVID. Kareem Hunt definitely still out with an injury. That leaves Dearness Johnson, who was probably still available on some waiver wires. I know he was definitely available in some leagues of mine because people saw Nick Chubb coming back and were like, okay, show's over, move on, nothing to see here. Well, there may actually, in fact, be still something to see here. So go ahead and pick him up if you can. Highly recommend it because he could be a viable RB2 for sure, not even a desperation one. If Nick Chubb's not playing, you can start Dearness Johnson. The Patriots side of keep it to the Browns. Donovan Peoples-Jones, another one to keep an eye on. I think he is going to be the wide receiver to benefit the most from the absence of Odell Beckham Jr., who has, of course, left the team as of this past week. Jarvis Landry seems to be tailing a little in the wrong direction. I don't think the team necessarily cares as much about getting Rashard Higgins involved. Or Anthony Schwartz. I think they really like Donovan Peoples-Jones. I think they want to see him involved, but they don't need to force it to him the way they felt like they had to force it to Odell Beckham. He is someone I would be looking to pick up with waivers, as I mentioned yesterday. He's potentially someone you can play in this game as well. Browns defense also potential play, given that Mac Jones has been turning the ball over a bit this season. And then on Patriots side of the ball, running backs, again, running back injuries are going to be what defines this season because it has been a serious issue. And much like how the Browns might be down 2 running backs, the Patriots also might be down 2 running backs. Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson both dealing with head issues. I think officially concussions, or at least a concussion in the case of Stevenson. If Stevenson can't play or Harris can't play, you should be looking at Brandon Bolden. I probably don't want to really rely on JJ Taylor. I think we've seen how that goes. Doesn't always end well. Bolden's been a bit more reliable this season, so I would be looking at him instead. However, if Ramondre Stevenson is going to play, even if Damian Harris also plays, I would be looking at Ramondre Stevenson potentially as someone to at least get onto your bench. And then if Damian Harris doesn't play, someone to put in your lineup. Because I think if Damian Harris is out and Ramondre Stevenson is in, Ramondre Stevenson will be the lead back for the New England Patriots. Not playing Mac Jones. Wide receivers are intriguing potentially, but man, by wide receivers, I really just mean Jacoby Myers. He's just never going to score a touchdown, is he? So, I'm probably staying away from the pass catchers from the Patriots in this game. Unless they magically sign Odell Beckham Jr. We'll see how that goes. Even then, probably still staying away for this week. But that is going to be interesting to monitor to see if they emerge as favorites to sign Odell. And that does it for the 1 o'clock slate. So before we move on to the 4 o'clock slate, I'm going to take another sip of water here. I feel like there's really no professional way to do that on a live stream by yourself. It's one thing when you have a co-host who can kind of talk and like the picture's a little smaller, yada, yada. You don't care about this. I barely care about this. I simply want to make it seem that like I'm not trying to be slovenly here. So let's just move on. Let's just get into the 4 o'clock game. I mean, that's why you're here. You want to hear the Week 10 preview. You don't want to hear me ramble on about drinking water on a live stream. So without further ado, the 4 o'clock slate, Vikings at Chargers. This one was not supposed to be as drama-filled as we expected. And then yesterday happened with the Dalvin Cook news. My official position on the Dalvin Cook news is I have no official position. There seems to be potentially credible information on either side of this. I'm going to let it play out before I say anything remotely definitive. Other than I hope whoever is in fact the victim of any domestic abuse in this situation ultimately gets justice and ultimately is able to bounce back from this. Whomever that happens to be, again, is the literal opposite of cut and dry. It is uncut and I'm not going to go there. All right, moving on though. Dalvin Cook does seem likely to play this game, so you can pick up Alexander Mattison as an insurance policy if you want, but don't expect him to be playing this week. I think there is likely nothing that's going to happen until we actually get legal proceedings going on, evidence being presented in court. Until then, I do find it unlikely that the NFL will place Cook on the commissioner's exempt list. They will allow this to play out in the legal system. And then if Cook is found to be guilty of any wrongdoing, they will proceed accordingly from there. But that will not be before kickoff at 4:05 Eastern time on Sunday. So expect Cook to play and put him in your lineup. As far as the other Vikings go, man, that might be it. It really might be. I mean, Kirk Cousins, he's been playing around top 12 level in general this season. However, the Chargers are a tough matchup against the pass. They are a run funnel defense. They want you to run the ball on them. They will then shut you down when you try to pass. So, you got to play Adam Thielen. You got to play Justin Jefferson. They have the talent to get it done, but you're definitely staying away from KJ Osborne. You're definitely staying away from Ty Conklin, in my opinion. And I would probably stay away from Kirk Cousins as well. Trust the guys whose talent is so good that they will still produce, even in a tough matchup. Because, you can't get galaxy brain about it. You can't bench Justin Jefferson and then be like, oh, man, he scored like 20 points and I left him on my bed. It's like, but I thought it was a tough. No. There's some guys you just play. And if you're going to take the L, just take the L. I'd rather take the L and have someone like Justin Jefferson perform badly in my starting lineup than take the L and have him have been great on my bench. It's not DFS where you can really start to play around with those things and avoid guys like that because you can get someone of similar talent in a better matchup. On the Charger side of the ball, you can probably play Justin Herbert. You can probably play Austin Eckler. By which I mean you can definitely play Justin Herbert and you can definitely play Austin Eckler. You can also definitely play Keenan Allen, and you should definitely play Mike Williams, even though he has had a rough go of it. I don't find this Vikings defense to be particularly tough. The Chargers at home looking to continue their bounce back a little. They're now tied for the division lead. Expect that offense to be clicking in this game. And so, yeah, I would play those wide receivers for sure. The tight ends are a little trickier. I'm probably going to avoid that situation if I can, just because there's not enough workload, I think, to go around reliably. I mean, if you had to play someone, it would be Jared Cook, but Darnold Parham takes enough work that it's like, I definitely just called him Darnold Parham. Donald Parham definitely takes enough work that it makes me hesitant to play Cook at all, which is why we recommended him as someone you can drop if you need to drop a tight end this week. Another 4:05 game. We got the Panthers at the Cardinals. And this one is interesting, of course, because Sam Darnold is not going to be the quarterback. It's going to be PJ Walker going up against Colt McCoy again. Like, it does seem that is a real possibility. I'll be curious to see whether Kyler plays this game or not. If Kyler does play, then I am more interested in playing guys like Christian Kirk, like Rondell Moore, like AJ Green. I'm starting to sour on AJ Green regardless. But if Colt McCoy is the one quarterbacking, I'm probably going to stay away from the Cardinals pass catching options. Zach Ertz is interesting just because he is still an incredibly talented tight end. He demands targets. They like to use the tight end, it seems now, in that offense. So given the options you have at tight end, probably can still play Zach Ertz. And then at running back, I think it's just James Conner this week as far as guys you want to play. I think Eno Benjamin, worth a stash. Someone to consider again if you need a desperation RB2. I'm not dying to flex him. I'm really not dying to run him out in the RB2. This is a guy who it's like I kind of want to wait and see. Chase Edmonds is going to be out for a minute. He will get another opportunity to use Eno Benjamin if he is going to be a viable part of this offense moving forward. Going back to the Panthers side of things, actually, real quick, if you have the Cardinals defense, play the Cardinals defense. Now moving back to the Panthers side of things, you still got to play DJ Moore. You still got to play Christian McCaffrey. I don't know that you still got to play anyone else. Period. The end. The defense, the kicker, the tight end, is just none of it. It is DJ Moore. It is Christian McCaffrey. That is it. Only exception would potentially be if Christian McCaffrey is ruled out for this game, which it seems that he won't be, because it does seem that he is now trending officially in the right direction. You could maybe consider the backup. Though Hubbard, I think, has been relatively uninspiring. Amir Abdullah, Amir Abdullah has been interesting. I'm trying to pull up his stats here from the past couple of games. At Atlanta, solid performance, especially in PPR, where you're getting that 5 targets, and he saw 5 targets again this most recent week against New England. So he's intriguing on that front, but I think Chuba will retain most of the rushing work. So you could potentially play Chuba as an RB2, but I think I'd still want to stay away from the Panthers run game in this matchup if McCaffrey is not playing. And again, if McCaffrey is playing, I'm definitely staying away, and I'm just playing Christian McCaffrey. All right. Got 2 more 4 o'clock games. Well, these are the 4:25 ones, though. First up, Eagles at Broncos. You're playing Jalen Hurts. You're playing Devonta Smith. You're playing Dallas Goedert. You're playing Jordan Howard? Have we gotten to this point? Yeah, we might have gotten to this point. Seriously, they seem to like Jordan Howard. He's got some familiarity with the team, even though he doesn't necessarily have a ton of familiarity with the system. Again, he's never played under Nick Sirianni before this. He did, however, play, of course, for the Eagles. They seem to like him. And I think he potentially is the more viable option between him and Boston Scott, as long as Miles Sanders is out. So if you do need, again, an RB2, I think Jordan Howard is viable. I would rather play him than someone like Chuba Hubbard with McCaffrey out. Could that be a ballsy pick? Perhaps, but I just, from what I saw last week, they do seem to think he is an answer for them. Other than that, though, I'm not dying to play anyone else from the Eagles, nor should I really be dying to play anyone else from the Eagles. I don't think I'm dying to play their defense either. The Broncos have looked good against bad teams, and the Eagles are a bad team. I mean, they're not an awful team, but they're a bad team. So on the Broncos side of things, I'm probably staying away from Teddy Bridgewater, though. Maybe as a streaming option, but I think there are better streaming options out there. Derek Carr, Carson Wentz, even Ryan Tannehill's somewhat available. Matt Ryan, I'd probably play instead. It's just he's fairly far down the list now. I think you got to play the top 3 wide receivers. You got to play Jerry Jeudy. You got to play Tim Patrick. You got to play Cortland Sutton. You're probably going to play Noah Fant if he is good to go for this game, but I don't know that I'm necessarily expecting an amazing bounce back performance from him. You can play the Broncos defense. I think Jalen Hurts will have some turnovers here, even if ultimately he gets some garbage time points and still looks good for fantasy purposes. And you got to play both running backs until further notice. Like Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams, they've been great. I think they will continue to be great in this game. Great relative because they both see diminished workloads. But that being said, you still got to play them. Like, unless you're really deep at running back and you can magically get away with it. There was one team I had where I was deep enough at running back that I didn't have to play either of the Arizona running backs, for example, pretty much all season because I just happened to be particularly deep at the position with the way the draft fell out and everything. But barring a situation like that, you need to be playing these guys. All right. Last 4 o'clock game here. Another 425 one. The Seattle Seahawks at the Green Bay Packers. Be really curious to see who's at quarterback for both of these teams. Because if it's Geno Smith again, not great. Packers defense isn't absolutely terrible, though they're not amazing. But it's looking like it's going to be Russell Wilson. So I'm going to proceed with this, assuming that Russell Wilson is going to be that quarterback at this 425 kickoff. And so if Russell Wilson's playing, I'm going to play Tyler Lockett. I'm going to play DK Metcalf. I'm not going to play Gerald Everett. I think, unfortunately, we're just never going to get the consistency we'd like from him. And there are just better options at tight end. You can get Dan Arnold. You hopefully got Pat Freiermuth. Tyler Conklin, while he doesn't have a great matchup, in my opinion, against the Chargers, like at least he gets targets. Everett's just not seeing the workload we'd expect from him. And he's not really doing the most with it when he gets it anyway. And then on the Packers side, the Packers side gets a little complicated in that there's 2 completely different sets of outcomes, which I guess makes it a little simple. A binary decision is not the most difficult decision. So, outcome number 1, Aaron Rodgers plays. If Aaron Rodgers plays, you can play Devonta Adams. You could maybe pick your poison on whoever you think the second wide receiver is going to be. Could be Marquez Valdez-Scantling. That would be my bet. Weirdly enough, as much as I don't love Marquez Valdez-Scantling, as a player, not personally, I'm sure he's a great guy. You can play Aaron Jones. You could potentially play A.J. Dillon. I think A.J. Dillon is another guy that falls into that desperation RB2 category where there's definitely better options out there. But if you've got him and that's what you've got, I guess roll with it. They certainly like him in that offense. It's just his volume. It's not dependable. Mason Crosby, you could potentially play if Aaron Rodgers is healthy. And then you have the other side of things where if Aaron Rodgers isn't healthy, then Jordan Love's the starter. And if Jordan Love's the starter, you can play Devontae Adams. You can play Aaron Jones because really you're not going to have a better option. That's it. You're playing no one else from the Packers if that's the case. And then you can possibly, I think you can play the Seattle Seahawks defense if Jordan Love is the quarterback for the Packers. The Packers line really wasn't able to protect Jordan Love that amazingly, but he also didn't do anything that great aside from that. I have been famously as famous as it can get when it's me. But so let's go. Famously, that'll get gift or memed or something if someone catches that. But seriously, I've been out on Jordan Love. I will probably stay out on Jordan Love. I just don't think he has what it takes to be an NFL starting quarterback. I don't see anything this season that's changed my mind, and I don't think I will see anything that's changed my mind. So I am staying away from the Packers if he's under center. That's all there is to it. All right. Coming down to the wire here. Chiefs at Raiders. On the Chiefs, you can play Pat Mahomes. You can play Tyreek Hill. You can play Travis Kelce. I do not believe CEH is coming back for this game, but let me check my notes here. DraftKings Nation says he could return in week 10. But he's still just barely practicing, so it could be Darrell Williams for one more week. If it is Darrell Williams, you can play him. He is someone to keep an eye on, maybe on waivers in case someone's dropped him with the anticipation of CEH coming back. That being said, it's probably not available. So if you got him, he's a RB2 or a flex consideration for me. I don't think I would love to play the Chiefs defense, though. Derek Carr has been known to throw an interception. So if you think you can get some turnover points there and there really isn't a better option out there, I guess. But the problem is there probably is a better option out there, including the Raiders defense, who the Raiders defense has played decently this season. They are going up against the Chiefs, who have been a pretty good matchup from fantasy perspective for opposing defenses. So the Raiders were my pick in a week too early waiver wire last week, and they're still kind of my waiver pick this week. So there's a chance if you're choosing between the Chiefs and someone else, that someone else is the Raiders. You should just play the Raiders instead. Patrick Mahomes has not quite looked like himself. The team has not looked like itself. Again, there are just some offensive weapons on there that you can't bench, but I don't know that I expect the Chiefs to even win this game. I think the Raiders will win. Moving on to the Raiders and who you can play from there, aside from the defense, Derek Carr as a streaming option is viable. I think Hunter Renfrow, again, is someone you can play, like I said earlier, when answering the Chosen Rose's question. I think Renfrow is going to be Carr's security blanket moving forward. I think, unfortunately, we did not see what we would like to from Bryan Edwards. I think Zay Jones, we saw about what we're going to see from Zay Jones. The one thing that'll be curious is Deshaun Jackson, but I think that is a wait and see. I would not roll him out this week. And obviously you can play Darren Waller. You can play Josh Jacobs. You could flex or RB2 Kenyon Drake. Though I don't love it personally, but he's being used in a way that he has some fantasy relevance. Finally, guys, gals, we have made it to the end. The Los Angeles Rams taking on my San Francisco 49ers. It will be a game that will surely crush my soul at the end of the 3-hour telecast. Do we at least get the Mannings this week? I'm gonna look that up, because if I get the Manning cast, maybe it'll be okay. Manning cast schedule. When is the next Manning cast? 2 days ago. What? Come on. I need to know when they're going to play, not when they're not going to play. Okay, denotes games with a Manning cast. Oh, I don't think we get a Manning cast, guys. That's a bummer. Well, hopefully I'll be wrong, and this will turn out well for my Niners. Just in case it doesn't, you're not playing Jimmy Garoppolo. You are playing Elijah Mitchell. You're probably not playing another running back from the Niners. JaMychal Hasty is intriguing in general, not for this week. Playing George Kittle. You're playing Deebo Samuel still. You're definitely considering Brandon Ayuk. He's a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 flex guy for me this week. You're not playing the Niners defense. If you wanted to throw Robbie Gould out there as a kicker, sure. On the Rams side of things, looks a little brighter because the Niners haven't been that good. So you can play Matthew Stafford, obviously. You can play Darrell Henderson. You can play Russian roulette and play Sony Michel if you think he's going to take enough work away from Henderson, which more than once this season he has. So that is an option. But, man, it just feels so risky every time you do it. You can definitely play the starting 2 wide receivers, Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. Van Jefferson is intriguing. I think this is a positive matchup for him, but ultimately his target share just still makes him a bit of a question mark. He is a flex consideration guy for me. Tyler Higbee, he's a viable tight end option that you're not going to feel like amazing about, but he's there. If there's no one else better on waivers, you just roll with him and play him. You can play the Rams defense. The Niners O-line's got issues. We got injuries. It's like, who knows who's going to be defending Jimmy Garoppolo from the likes of Von Miller and Aaron Donald. Jesus Christ. This is a preview into what my day is going to be like on Monday night. But that covers everything. We did it, guys. This is it. This was the Week 10 pop-up preview. Thank you for joining me here. Next week, you will get us in podcast form on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, which I think is a thing that I didn't just make up, Anchor, wherever your podcasts are sold. Yes, I know they're free. Don't judge me. Don't at me. But you can find me at Twitter, where I am McLateralFF. I'm also at thelateralff.com, where you can find written content. I had formerly been at Ball Blast, but unfortunately they've decided to stop running written content. I still wish them nothing but the best as they move forward. Potentially there will be something there if they are interested in having me participate. I will be more than happy to hearing them out. I want to thank them again personally for giving me the opportunity that they did, but no heat check coming this week because unfortunately there will not be a heat check coming, at least on Ball Blast, for the rest of time. It's sad. It is what it is. But again, thank them so much for the opportunity that I had through the first half of the season. No Pro Football Mania article this week. That will be dropping next week, where I take a look at some deep targets that are still available out there on waiver, even in your dynasty leagues, that have some value. And then a week 2 early waiver wire should drop tomorrow. You can find this video at YouTube. I do believe we will throw it up into a post on the website as well. And that's it. Thank you so much for joining. And until next time, peace out.